Story 1. I sacrificed everything to raise my sister, but she pretended to be rich and got married into wealth while cutting me off. So here's the deal. I, 33F, have been raising my little sis, Becca, 23F, since I was just 15. I wasn't ready to be a parent. I mean, who is at 15? But when you lose your parents in a car accident and all that's left of your family is a scared little 5-year-old, you don't really have a choice. You just do what needs to be done. We grew up poor, scraping by in our small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. It wasn't long after our parents died that my father's side of the family swooped in like vultures. They took everything. Our dad's life insurance, his small savings, even the damn car that had been in the crash. All they left us with was our childhood home, and that felt like more of a pity offering than anything else. But it was all we had, so I held on to it like a lifeline. I had to drop out of high school to raise Becca. At 15, I became the breadwinner. It wasn't easy. No one wanted to hire a teenager, especially one with no experience and no education. But I was headstrong or maybe just desperate. I took whatever odd jobs I could find. Babysitting, cleaning houses, flipping burgers at the local fast food joint. Somehow, I managed to climb the ranks, and over the past years, I became a manager at the fast food place. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and the money I made there and through other odd jobs helped see Becca through college. Becca was my world. I worked my fingers to the bone for her. Every cent I earned went toward making sure she had a better life than I did. I scrimped and saved so I could send her to college. Our parents would have wanted that. And Becca, she used to promise me the world. She'd say, "Once I graduate, I'll get a good job, and I'll pay you back for everything, sis." I never wanted repayment. I just wanted her to be happy. But it was nice to hear that my sacrifices meant something to her. But then, a few months ago in her final year at college, Becca met a boy, and everything changed. They dated all through college, and Becca stopped coming home during breaks. She'd hang out with Jake and his family instead. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured it was just a phase. College changes people, right? Besides, after doing some research, I found out that Jake's family was one of the biggest in town. Old money, trust funds, fun kids, the works. They were practically royalty around here. They owned half the businesses in town and had more money than I could ever dream of. I didn't object to their relationship. I mean, who was I to stand in the way of Becca's happiness? If she was in love, that was all that mattered. But I couldn't help feeling a little left out. She used to be my little shadow, always by my side. Now she barely had time for me, but I kept quiet. I didn't want to be the clingy older sister who couldn't let go. After graduation, things only got worse. Becca moved in with Jake, and I saw her even less. The requests for money kept coming, though. She'd say it was for groceries or rent, and I'd send her whatever she needed, no questions asked. Although I wanted her to move back into our childhood home, it was still my job to take care of her, after all. But the amount she was asking for started getting ridiculous. Like, I could buy a car with this ridiculous amount. I figured maybe Jake's family was putting on the pressure. Or maybe her life had just gotten more expensive. I didn't want to pry, so I kept sending the money. Then one day, I was scrolling through Facebook during a break at work, and I saw something shocking. It was a picture of Becca and Jake, smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. She was wearing a ring, an engagement ring. They were freaking getting married. My heart nearly burst with pride and happiness. My little sister was getting married. I immediately texted her to congratulate her and asked her about the wedding plans. I couldn't wait to see her walk down the aisle. Maybe she'd even ask me to walk her down on the biggest day of her life. I quickly offered her our mother's wedding dress. I loved it and had dreamed of wearing it someday myself. It was old-fashioned, sure, but it was beautiful, and it would have meant the world to me to see Becca wear it. But her reply wasn't what I expected. She told me not to talk about the wedding, that I wasn't invited. I was stunned. I texted her again, asking if something was wrong, if I had done something to upset her. She didn't respond. I tried calling, but she declined the call. My little sister was shutting me out, and I didn't understand why. The next day, I managed to convince her to meet me for coffee. I was so anxious to see her, to hear what was going on. I even took off work, which was a big deal because missing a shift meant losing money I couldn't afford to lose. But for Becca, I'd do anything. When she finally showed up, I hardly recognized her. Her black hair, that I loved so much because it reminded me of our mother, was now dyed blonde. She looked different, not just physically, but in the way she carried herself. There was a coldness, a distance I'd never felt before. I tried to make conversation, asking about the wedding, asking to see the ring. She showed it to me but refused to let me touch it. She said my hands were dirty. I tried to laugh it off, cleaned my hands with some wet wipes I had in my bag, but she still wouldn't let me hold it. She didn't even drink the coffee I ordered for her. She just sat there, staring at me like I was a stranger. I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. I just sent her money 2 weeks ago. I was trying so hard to make her happy, to be supportive, and yet here she was, acting like she couldn't stand to be around me. I apologized, thinking maybe I'd upset her somehow, but instead of calming down, she got even more agitated. When I insisted that I needed to meet her fiancé before the wedding, she snapped at me, telling me that I must never meet him, that I must never show my face at her wedding. If I truly loved her, she made me promise, and I did. But it broke something inside me. The conversation haunted me for days. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Becca wasn't acting like herself. She was hiding something from me, something big. I started digging into her life, following her college friends on Facebook, trying to piece together what was going on. And what I found out shattered me. My sister has been living a lie. She's been telling everyone that our parents are wealthy, that they live abroad and are funding her lavish lifestyle. She is pretending to be rich, and she's about to marry into one of the richest families in town based on those lies. I understand her now. She has fabricated this entire life, and if I show up at the wedding, the truth will come out. It will all come crashing down. I am currently nothing but a reminder of her real past, the one she is so desperate to erase. If I show up at her wedding, it will ruin everything for her. She'll lose Jake, his family, her chance to live like a princess, all because she is ashamed of me, the same sister who has sacrificed everything for her. I honestly couldn't believe it when I found out. After everything I've done, after all the years of hard work, all the sleepless nights, all the dreams I put on hold to raise her, this is how she is going to repay me. By cutting me out of her life because I don't fit the image she wants to portray. The wedding is next month, and I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to show up anyway, to force her to face the truth. But another part of me knows that would only hurt her, and despite everything, I don't want to hurt her. I just want my sister back, the little girl I raised, the one who used to promise me the world. I've been going over it in my head, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Did I shelter her too much? Did I push her too hard? Or was this always who she was destined to become? I don't have the answers, and I don't know if I ever will. What I do know is that I can't keep living like this. I can't keep sacrificing myself for someone who doesn't want me in their life. I've spent so long putting her needs above mine that I've forgotten how to take care of myself. Maybe it's time I started looking after myself instead. But it's hard. It's so damn hard. Because even though she's pushed me away, I don't want her to get married under this umbrella of lies and a fake life. So Reddit, lay it on me. Am I wrong for wanting to ruin my younger sister's wedding? Or should I just fade into the background and let her live this fake life she's created? I'm torn 6 ways from Sunday here, and I could really use some outside perspective. Update 1. Holy smokes. I never expected this post to blow up like it has. My phone's been buzzing non-stop with notifications. I can't thank you all enough for the overwhelming support, advice, and even the tough love some of you have dished out. It's given me a lot to think about. I want to address some of the most common questions and comments I've been seeing. 1. Legal guardianship. No, I never legally adopted Becca. I was only 15 when our parents died, so I couldn't. Child services did check in on us occasionally, but our small town being what it is, they kind of turned a blind eye as long as Becca seemed okay. I know it wasn't ideal, but we made it work. 2. The money situation. A lot of you have asked about the recent increase in Becca's financial demands. You're right. It is suspicious. We're talking about a jump from a couple of $100 here and there to thousands per month. At first, I chalked it up to big city living, But now I'm wondering if there's more to it. Maybe she's trying to keep up appearances with Jake's family. I don't know, and it's killing me. 3. Jake's family. From what I've gathered, mostly through town gossip and a bit of social media stalking, they're old money, like really old money. They own about half the businesses in town, including the bank, the country club, and even the local newspaper. They have a reputation for being pretty snobbish and exclusive. I've never met them, but I've heard stories about how they treat people they consider beneath them. For my mental health, yes, I've tried therapy. A few of you suggested it might help me set better boundaries. The thing is, it's expensive, and with my income, I can't afford regular sessions. I did go a few times after our parents died, but it was mostly to help Becca cope. I guess I never really dealt with my own grief. 5. Extended family. This is a sore spot. After our parents died, our dad's side of the family swooped in and took pretty much everything. We haven't heard from them since. As for our mom's side, they live across the country, and we were never really in the picture. It's been just Becca and me for so long. 6. My education. Several people have asked why I didn't go back to school once Becca was older. Honestly, it just never seemed like the right time. There was always another bill to pay, another crisis to handle. Plus, the thought of sitting in a classroom with kids 10 years younger than me was pretty intimidating. 7. Becca's personality. This is tough to answer. The little girl I raised was sweet, caring, and grateful. But people change, right? I kept telling myself that her distance was just part of growing up, spreading her wings. Now, I'm not so sure. Maybe I've been blind to who she really is, or maybe she's lost herself trying to fit into Jake's world. I'm still torn about what to do about the wedding. Part of me wants to respect Becca's wishes and stay away, but another part feels like I'd be betraying myself if I didn't stand up for the truth. One comment really stuck with me. Someone said I spent my whole life being a parent to Becca. Maybe it's time to start parenting myself. That hit hard, you know. I've got a lot of thinking to do. I'll update again once I've made a decision about the wedding. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know to feel like someone's listening after all these years. Update 2. It's the day before the wedding, and my emotions are all over the place. After reading through hundreds of comments and spending nights tossing and turning, I've made a decision. I'm not going to the wedding. Most of you advised against crashing it, and after a lot of soul-searching, I agree. It would only cause more pain and drama, and despite everything, I don't want to hurt Becca. This is supposed to be the happiest day of her life, even if it's built on lies. I tried calling Becca one last time yesterday, hoping we could talk things out before the big day, but as I feared, she's blocked my number. I even drove by her apartment on my lunch break, but her car wasn't there. It's like she's completely ghosted me, erasing any trace of her old life before she steps into her new one. I did get a strange call from an unknown number earlier today. When I answered, I heard breathing on the other end, and then they hung up. Part of me wonders if it was Becca having second thoughts or wanting to reach out, but I'm probably just grasping at straws, seeing what I want to see. A few of you suggested I write Becca a letter, lay out my feelings and our history. I tried, I really did. I sat down with a pen and paper. It felt more personal than an email, but every time I started writing, I ended up with a tear-stained mess. How do you sum up a lifetime of love, sacrifice, and hurt in a single letter? In the end, I decided against it. If Becca wants to know how I feel, she knows where to find me. I'm planning to stay home tomorrow and try to distract myself. A few of my coworkers, bless them, have offered to come over for moral support. We're going to order pizza, watch terrible movies, and hopefully keep my mind off what's happening across town. To those who've asked about my job, I called in sick for tomorrow. My boss knows a little about the situation and has been surprisingly understanding. I'm lucky in that regard, I guess. I keep thinking about what Becca might be doing right now. Is she having last-minute fittings, rehearsing her vows? Does she feel any guilt or regret about cutting me out of this huge moment in her life? Or is she just relieved that her embarrassing past won't intrude on her perfect day? A part of me still wants to drive to that church tomorrow and tell everyone the truth, but I know that's just hurt and anger talking. As much as Becca has hurt me, I still love her. She's still that little girl I raised somewhere deep down, and I have to believe that someday she'll remember that too. So tomorrow, while Becca walks down the aisle into her new life, I'll be here trying to figure out what my life looks like without her in it. It's terrifying if I'm being honest. I've spent so long defining myself as Becca's sister, her caretaker, that I'm not sure who I am without that role. But maybe that's the silver lining in all this, if there is one. Maybe it's finally time for me to figure out who I am and what I want beyond just being Becca's sister. I'll update again after the wedding day has passed. Thank you all again for your support. It means the world to know I'm not alone in this. Update 3. Hi there, everyone. It's been a week since the wedding, and to say it's been a roller coaster would be an understatement. I've been putting off this update because, honestly, I'm still processing everything that's happened. But you've all been so supportive, and you deserve to know how things turned out. So here goes. The wedding day itself was tough. I stayed home as planned, and my coworkers came over with enough junk food to feed an army. They tried their best to keep my spirits up, but I couldn't help checking social media every 5 minutes. The local paper's Instagram was full of photos of the society wedding of the year. Seeing Becca in her wedding dress. Not our mom's, of course, but some designer gown that probably cost more than our house, was like a punch to the gut. She looked happy, radiant, even, and I wasn't there to see it in person. I thought that would be the end of it. Becca would ride off into the sunset with her Prince Charming, and I'd be left behind to pick up the pieces of my life. But 2 days after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail from Becca. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely open it. Inside was a short note that read, "I'm sorry for cutting you out, but I needed a clean break to start my new life. Please don't try to contact me or Jake's family. It's better this way. Take care of yourself. B. No, I love you. No, thank you for everything. Just a cold request for me to disappear." I'm not ashamed to admit I cried for hours after reading it. Felt like losing her all over again. I was ready to respect her wishes, to try and move on with my life. But then yesterday, everything exploded in a way I never could have predicted. I was at home, half-heartedly looking at online GED programs. Several of you suggested I focus on my education, and you're right, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find an older woman I'd never seen before, but I recognized her immediately from the wedding photos. Jake's mother. She introduced herself as Margaret and asked if she could come in. I was so shocked, I just stepped aside and let her in. We sat in my tiny living room, her looking so out of place in her designer outfit, and she dropped a bombshell. She'd known the truth about Becca all along. Apparently, it's standard practice in their circles to do background checks on potential spouses. Margaret had hired a private investigator months ago, who had uncovered everything about our background. She knew about our parents' death, about me raising Becca, about our financial struggles. Everything. I asked her why she allowed the wedding to go ahead if she knew Becca had been lying. Her response chilled me to the bone. She said, "I wanted to see how far she'd take it. I wanted to give her a chance to come clean." Margaret hit me with questions about our life, about the money Becca had been asking for. I found myself spilling everything. Years of pent-up emotions poured out. She thanked me for my honesty and said she had some matters to attend to. Then she left as quickly as she'd arrived, leaving me angry. I don't know exactly what happened next, but from what I've heard through the town, it was ugly. Margaret confronted Becca and Jake at their new apartment. There was a huge blow-up. Jake apparently had had no idea about Becca's real background. He believed every lie she'd told. Now Jake's family is threatening to annul the marriage. They're claiming Becca committed fraud by misrepresenting herself. The whole town is buzzing with the scandal. And Becca, she called me last night hysterical. All her lies have come crashing down around her. She begged me to tell everyone it wasn't true, that she really was from a wealthy family. She pleaded with me to lie for her, to help her keep the life she'd built. Part of me, the big sister who spent her whole life protecting Becca, wanted to rush to her aid, but a stronger part, the part that's finally starting to value herself, knew that I couldn't. I told Becca I loved her, but that she needed to face the consequences of her actions, that I couldn't lie for her anymore. She hung up on me, sobbing. "I don't know what's going to happen now. Will Jake stand by her once the dust settles? Will his family follow through on their threats? Will Becca finally have to face reality? I don't have answers to any of these questions. What I do know is that I'm emotionally exhausted. This whole ordeal has dredged up years of buried feelings and unresolved issues. Several of you recommended therapy in your comments, and I think you're right. I found a support group for people estranged from their families that I'm going to try. I'm also moving forward with getting my GED. A few kind Redditors even offered to help tutor me online, which I might take them up on. I don't know what the future holds for me or for Becca, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm putting myself first, and that's something I'll hold on to. I'll post one final update once things have settled down a bit more. Thank you all again for your support throughout this crazy journey. Update 4. Final update. It's been a month since my last update, and it feels like a lifetime has passed. So much has changed, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. But I promised you all a final update, so here goes. First, the fallout from the wedding drama. It was messy, to say the least. Jake's family did follow through on their threat to seek an annulment. They claimed that Becca had essentially committed fraud by misrepresenting herself and her background. It turned into a huge legal battle that was all anyone in town could talk about for weeks. Becca tried to fight it at first. She hired a lawyer. God knows how she paid for it, and tried to argue that her background didn't matter, that she and Jake were in love. But when Jake himself testified that he felt deceived and wanted out of the marriage, it was pretty much over. The marriage was annulled 3 weeks after the wedding. Jake's family made sure it happened quickly and quietly, probably to minimize the scandal. I heard through the grapevine that they paid Becca a settlement in exchange for her signing an NDA about the whole affair. As for Becca herself, it's complicated. After the annulment was finalized, she showed up at my door in tears. She apologized for everything. For lying, for cutting me out, for taking advantage of me all these years. She said she'd gotten so caught up in the fantasy of being someone else that she'd lost sight of who she really was and the people who truly cared about her. I'd love to say I forgave her immediately, and we hugged it out like in the movies, but real life isn't that simple. I told her I needed time, that I was glad she was taking responsibility for her actions, but that trust takes time to rebuild. She's been staying with me for the past 2 weeks. It's awkward, to say the least. We're both trying, but there's so much hurt and resentment built up over the years. We've started seeing a family therapist together. Turns out Becca's settlement is good for something, and it's helping us work through some of our issues. I'm not sure what the future holds for our relationship. I don't know if we'll ever be as close as we once were, but we're trying, and that's something. As for me, I've been focusing on myself for what feels like the first time in my life. I started those online GED classes I mentioned, and I'm proud to say I'm doing well. It's challenging, juggling work and study, but it feels good to be working towards something for myself. I've also been going to that support group for people estranged from their families. It's been eye-opening to hear other people's stories and realize I'm not alone in my struggles. Plus, it's teaching me a lot about setting healthy boundaries, something I've always struggled with. My boss got wind of everything that happened. Small-town word travels fast, and she's been incredibly supportive. She even offered me a promotion. It's not much, but it's a step up, and the extra money will help with my education costs. One unexpected bright spot in all this: Margaret, Jake's mother, has become something of a mentor to me. After everything settled down, she reached out and offered to help me going back to school. She's been giving me advice on everything from study habits to career planning. I was wary at first, given her role in exposing Becca, but she's been nothing but kind and supportive. So where does this leave things? Honestly, I'm not sure. My relationship with Becca is still on shaky ground, but we're working on it. I'm slowly but surely building a life for myself that doesn't revolve around taking care of her. It's scary and exciting all at once. To everyone who's followed this crazy story, who's offered advice and support, thank you. Your words have meant more to me than you could know. You've helped me find the strength to stand up for myself and to start putting myself first. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. Whatever happens, I know I'll face it on my own terms. This is me signing off for the last time on this story. Thank you all again for everything. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Hello all. Never once did I think I would get to this point, to the point of reaching out to strangers on the internet for guidance, but here we are. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, but married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only. I honestly thought we had a unique and beautiful relationship because of that, but it appears that was just me. Some time ago, my wife began working at a new company. At first, she found it difficult to fit in because she's always been reserved, but after encouragement from me, she made friends with a group of girls. At first, I was happy she made friends, but then she started going out for drinks, parties, or something else her friends had planned. I became concerned by her change in behavior and tried to talk to her about it, but at the same time, I didn't want to restrict her in any way. It started to affect our relationship in the bedroom. My wife wasn't one to initiate intimacy, but as she continued going out, she was either too tired or wasn't in the mood. At some point, her company got a new manager whom my wife and her friends had taken a shine to. She began mentioning him in passing, but it got to the point where she pointed out how he handled certain problems that didn't seem to be work-related. I questioned her about her experience with this man, and she brushed off my concerns. She even started asking if I regretted not having more experience with women, to which I said no because she was all I ever needed. I swore I thought for a moment I saw a flash of sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. She started mentioning open marriages as a way to spice up our marriage. I was taken aback because my wife was never this kind of person, and not that liberal. To be honest, I at first refused and questioned if this had anything to do with the new manager, which she denied, but said she felt like she missed out, but at the same time didn't want to lose me, so this was a safer option. I warned her that she was playing with fire, then reluctantly and naively agreed. So we set some rules, mainly not to sleep with another person in our home. So for a year, my wife goes on dates, has one-night stands, then, as if I didn't see it coming, somehow is in some kind of relationship with that manager. I, on the other hand, had a few dates but no one-night stands because, frankly, it felt wrong to me. My wife would ask if I was fine, but I really wouldn't change her behavior. At some point, I felt the love I had for her, that pure innocence of marriage, was gone, and it was killing me inside. I ended up going on a date with an amazing woman who migrated over from South Korea. The conversation was effortless. She had the wit of a lightning-fast white crack and a smile that made one forget himself. This, of course, led to more dates until we were intimate. I honestly never had sex like I have with this woman, and I never knew a woman could be so giving and make one feel so desired. At first, my wife thought it was cute, but as the months went by, she began questioning my relationship with my lover. I promptly pointed out that this was her idea, and even though she was in a relationship with the manager, I was concerned about it. She was silent. She looked like she wanted to say something but held her tongue. She began coming home early to surprise me with dinner and get the house extra clean. She then started coming to my workplace to drop off lunch and begin to initiate intimacy in the bedroom. Honestly, if it wasn't for her opening up our marriage, all this would have had me jumping for joy. I barely gave in to her attempts at intimacy, and when I did, it was simply to get it over with. Something in me toward my wife died, and I could see she felt it too. I asked what brought on this change in her and what was different, and the response I got was that she wants to show me that she loves me and is happy with me. I never intended to, but I burst out laughing. I asked about her little group of friends, her manager lover, her one-night stands. She didn't respond that day and simply went to bed in tears. The next day, I get home to find her waiting for me. She told me she wants to close the marriage, that this whole experience was a horrible mistake, that she regrets everything, and that she wants us to be the focus of our relationship again. I told her to be honest with me and tell me what inspired all this in the first place, and wouldn't you know it, it was her group of friends that planted the idea because of their numerous sexual exploits. And when her manager came around, he surprisingly supported that lifestyle and encouraged my wife to live free. Apparently, it developed into an emotional affair, but only got physical once the marriage opened. She described it as being drunk behind the wheel of a speeding car. It was thrilling and intoxicating, But the price of this decision has become too much for her to bear. She sees now that she never needed a comparison, that what we had was truly unique and special, but now she feels like she murdered our marriage and any chance of a life together. I told her I might not ever be able to see her as my wife again, and this made her break down in front of me. I simply held her in silence as she cried until she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. She has since left her job and cut contact with all her friends and her manager. She even told me she's willing to spend the rest of her life making it up to me and working her fingers to the bone to be seen as a wife by me. But I haven't cut contact with my lover. My lover, quite frankly, makes me feel like a man, like I can challenge the world, and my wife hasn't in a while. The truth is, I don't know what to do in this situation. I would love to get this special feeling back if possible, but my lover basically saved me when I was at my lowest. Please help me. I forgot to add that we have our first marriage counseling session in a couple of hours. I'm not sure how that will go. I will post an update on our therapy session because, quite frankly, that in itself needs it, but I will answer some questions. 1. My lover is not married, but she is in an open marriage. My intention for this marriage is still unclear, mainly because I feel as much as I love my wife, I cannot trust her yet. At the same time, I find myself unable to truly let go because of our years together. The reason I agreed to counseling sessions was to figure out if I could come to a solution of sound mind and get off the indecisive train. 3. I didn't demand her phone at first because I didn't want to see an actual image of my wife with another man. The mental images and movies were bad enough, but to see the actual picture or whatever would have shattered me more than I already am. I forget to mention that this morning, as I got out of the shower, I saw my mother holding my phone and silently shaking as she read a message I had received. I just took it from her and didn't say anything. The message was from my lover. It said, "Good morning, handsome. I slept in your t-shirt last night because I missed going to bed and waking up in your arms. I missed greeting the new day with a kiss from you. I think this messed up my wife quite a bit because she has basically been shadowing me for the past 2 hours. Even when I went for a jog, I met her on an evening when my wife was on one of her dates. I was coming from a bookstore. She was being followed by a short, beefy man yelling at her, and when I saw him grab her arm and violently turn her around, I unconsciously stepped in. I practiced judo, but it's nothing spectacular. With that, I was able to restrain him and accidentally dislocate his wrist. It turns out she got him fired for sexual harassment, and he didn't take it too well afterward. She insisted on buying me coffee as a thank you, to which I agreed. As for her reaction to the open marriage, she initially hesitated. She was adamant about not being a home wrecker, but after she learned the full scope of my wife's actions from me, she basically threw caution to the wind. Update 1. The therapist seemed nice and experienced. She appeared unbiased and actually eager to help, even though it was our very first session. My wife took it as an opportunity to lay it all out. It seems she confessed that this group of friends made her wonder if she had missed her chance because she was committed to her first boyfriend and had no other experience, and that she never had the same adventures some of these supposedly amazing women had. Remember, some of them are divorced, but none are married. The therapist pointed out that this can be detrimental to a marriage due to the difference in mindset. My wife seemed to agree and added that after the new manager started approaching some of these friends, they encouraged her to see where it goes, and that this was a chance for her to explore or discover herself. She obviously felt guilty, so she says, so she never did anything physical until one of the divorced ones suggested an open marriage as a loophole and told her that some couples come out stronger because of it. So, after regrettably convincing me to open up the marriage, her so-called adventure began. It was intoxicating and blinding but lacked real substance, not like the kind we built over the years, and she started to question her reasons for doing this. She said she could see the hurt in my eyes but told herself this was an adventure. She had the chance to have an amazing experience, so the gravity of it all never occurred until she noticed a change in me. At first, she assumed that because I went on dates, I would gradually accept her situation and be okay with it, but that all changed when my lover became a constant in my adventures. Apparently, I started to smile again for no reason, and my eyes would light up when I would get a text message or when I cheerfully left the room to answer a call. She said she suddenly felt a pit in her stomach and started to get many panic attacks for no reason. She went to her friends for advice again, but they said it was a normal reaction for me to have during the adventure. But when the same divorced one who suggested this in the first place, it looks like his lover makes him happy, that was when the reality of it all finally dawned on her, and the very real possibility that another woman, and not his wife, gave him joy almost made her pass out. She realized how ridiculous this all was and begged them to help her win me back. But they just told her if she couldn't deal with it, why did she open her marriage in the first place? She knew then and there that these people were toxic and a threat to our marriage and the life we built. Hence, she's been on a mission to win me back by any means necessary. I, on the other hand, didn't share much, but I did let the counselor know about the situation on my side, with my lover still in the picture, to which the counselor said no resolution could ever be reached with my lover still in the picture and suggested we book another appointment after tomorrow. The counselor did say it was unusual for someone to stay with their first this long and gave the impression that any storm can be weathered. Sorry that it's long, but I figured I might as well give a full update. Update 2. This has quite literally been an episode of Jerry Springer. I have since moved into an apartment owned by my brother for a ridiculously cheap price. Just a little of what I have uncovered about my wife's behavior and some unsettling things about her manager. During our second session of counseling, I asked some of the questions that some Redditors asked. 1. If she was sure nothing physical happened before the opening of the marriage. She looked toward the ground and begged me not to make her say it. She said if she said it, then it would destroy us, but after some pushing, she shared that it wasn't physical, but they touched themselves in front of each other. This douchebag convinced her that since it wasn't physical, it wasn't technically cheating, and that they were simply enjoying each other's full beauty. I was absolutely floored by this, and she started shaking and hyperventilating. Snot even began flowing from her nostrils as she cried and apologized to me. At this point, even the counselor was taken aback and had a look of disbelief. My wife got on her knees and hugged my legs, saying how sorry she was too. I then asked her what really changed her view of him. She said after she started pulling back from the group as a whole, his behavior towards her changed. And then one evening, as she was leaving a meeting, she passed his office and heard him speaking about her to another male colleague. He said he was surprised at how easy it was to get her and how she is living proof that you can't trust the quiet ones. When the colleague asked if he actually fancied her, his response was that she was a pleasant distraction and that he had absolutely no intention of breaking up with his fiancée. He even added that this was simply to get it out of his system because the only woman who had ever understood him was his fiancée, and he didn't want to break up with her. He also mentioned how he felt bad for me, but you snooze, you lose. My wife, upon realizing that she was nothing more than a piece of meat to this man, added to the fact that she betrayed me for a cheap thrill, which actually made her suicidal in that moment. She said she left her workplace and vomited in the parking lot. She also added that her first thoughts were, "What have I done? And my name, please forgive me. I'm so sorry." I then asked her if she loved him, and when she did, she stopped loving me. She looked me dead in the eye through tears and said she never stopped loving me, which honestly makes it worse, and that he was just something different. She thought it was love, but now realizes how foolish that was. She squeezed my arm with surprising strength and said she knows she messed up, but she misses us and the connection we had before all this. She even suggested we move away and start fresh, just the two of us, just as it was meant to be. I then told her it wouldn't be fair to my lover and that I needed time away from her to process all of this. It was like she had a meltdown at those words. She started sobbing harder and saying incoherent things. She held on to me as if I were going to disappear. It took some time for both me and the counselor to calm her down. The counselor managed to convince her that maybe time apart could help us heal. Now, I wish I could end the update with just this. But as we got home, I began to pack, and my wife got a video call from her laptop. It was one of her former friends in tears. It turns out that after my wife resigned, this friend and the manager began a fling of their own, but apparently she had a pregnancy scare which caused him to basically turn into Dr. Jekyll. To make matters worse, she had a boyfriend whom she apparently could see a future with, and the only reason she even had a fling was because she was curious about the experience. Funny how that seems to be a trend. Her boyfriend found out because he discovered an email between the two discussing the potential pregnancy, but the manager basically accused her of babysitting him. Of course, he left her, And the reason she made contact was because she was under the impression that my wife had managed to save our marriage and was desperately seeking advice. I just turned and left and have been staying in the apartment ever since. Update 3. Some things that have happened so far in my decision moving forward. Well, quite a bit has happened. The former friend who had the pregnancy scare was indeed pregnant. But the stress of losing her boyfriend and being humiliated by the affair caused her to lose the baby. She basically turned ballistic and went full scorched earth on the manager. She exposed him to all the upper management and his fiancée. I happened to find his fiancée on Facebook, and this woman is basically the poster child of pretty small-town girl. Based on her profile, she's a special needs teacher who is a homebody and is very family-oriented. My very first thought was, what the hell is he doing messing around with other women when he got her at home? Honestly, women like him end up with women like her is one of the greatest mysteries of life. The former friend actually got in contact with me. She wanted my side of the version of events because she was collecting evidence against him, but she wanted to do it in person, and I agreed. From the moment I saw her face, I knew she was broken. The dark circles under her eyes and her red-colored iris clearly showed she didn't get any sleep and was haunted by her own thoughts. She thanked me for agreeing to meet her and immediately apologized for her role in my wife's adventure. It turns out she and my wife spoke again, and that's when she learned I had moved out. She didn't blame shift and wanted to take responsibility, hence why she wanted to meet in person. I thanked her for her efforts but asked her why she would go this far. She said losing both a child and the love of her life changed who she was at the core. She said she can hardly look in the mirror without feeling disgusted, and she can hardly sleep because all she sees is her ex's face. The day he found out, this woman clearly hated herself, and this meeting might have been a form of punishment for her. She tells me that since fraternizing among coworkers is a breach of conduct, and more so because he was in a position of influence, he will most likely be fired and possibly blacklisted from that field as a whole, but the same may be true for her as well, and she has accepted it. She left after hearing my side of the story, and I apologized again. I needed to get a few things from the old place, so I picked a time when I thought my wife wasn't home. Unfortunately, she was there, but what surprised me is that she had most of our wedding photos out on the coffee table as well as others, and she was staring at them when she noticed me. I could see she was crying. She tried to hug me, but I gently pushed her aside. She tried to offer me lunch, but I told her I wasn't hungry and that I wouldn't be long. I just needed a few things before I could proceed. She said she had something to show me. She pulled out her phone and showed me a message she received 2 days ago from her former manager who berated her. It was from a new number since she blocked his old one. Apparently, my wife helped her former friend expose him to all relevant parties, and he was fuming. She said she got the idea from chump ladies and marriage builders. She thought that by exposing the secret, she was removing its power, as well as giving us a fighting chance. I told her I was glad that she had the courage to do that, but it didn't change anything between us. I also informed her that I would be stopping marriage counseling and would do individual counseling instead. This made her sob softly, and she said she understood. I know I'm supposed to feel either elation from the actions taken or rage because it took this long, but I feel numb towards her. This isn't normal, hence why I want to address it in individual counseling and not marriage counseling. I have also seen a divorce lawyer at my brother's recommendation, just to be safe. As of now, I am not really willing to fight for this marriage, and it seems my wife consents. Before I left, she tried to initiate intimacy, but when I refused, she yelled and asked, "What does my lover do for me that she can't? What does she give me that I can't?" In a voice so loud that I'm sure the neighbors heard it. She said that whatever it was I wanted, she would do it. I shook my head and told her if she still couldn't tell after all that's happened, then it's clear where our marriage is headed, and left. This is where I am at least for now anyway, and once again, thank you all for your help. Hey guys, I think that all what happened was because as humans we have a pure nature, and if we tried to change that, we'll flip our lives into a mess. Don't try to destroy your nature because your life will be destroyed. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I caught my wife cheating on me with my fake best friend. The way I found them won't leave my brain. I'm 27M, my wife is 27F, and my best friend is 26M. I don't even know where to begin. I can't describe how I'm feeling right now or how to process any of this. I made this account initially to see if anyone else has gone through something remotely similar to this, and unfortunately, it's not that uncommon. I apologize in advance for the length of this post. I just needed to get this all out because I thought I'd go insane. I met my wife, we'll call her Sue, in college. We were both 18 at the time. We hit it off as soon as we went on our first date and were spewing "I love yous" within weeks of us dating. She kind of pursued me, but I was glad as hell that she did. We shared our deepest insecurities and secrets with each other. And when her dad passed away in her senior year of college, I was there for her through the whole ordeal. Her father had pancreatic cancer, and when he was hospitalized, I'd spend nights at the hospital with her, so she wouldn't be alone. We got through it, and that point in time strengthened our bond. She told me she didn't know what she would have done if I hadn't been there for her. She called me her soulmate. I knew I was going to marry this girl, and sure enough, I popped the question about 2 years after we graduated. At that point in time, life couldn't get any better for me. I married the girl of my dreams, had a well-paying job immediately after graduating, and both our families loved us. My best friend, we'll call him Dave, and I had what I could only describe as an unbreakable brotherly bond, or so I thought. We had known each other since 3rd grade, and he was the brother I never had. He was also married and moved away with his wife because she had landed a lucrative job at a big law firm about a year ago. His wife died in a car crash, and this broke him. He moved back to our hometown after, but he was never the same. I tried to be there for him, but he wouldn't engage with anyone. No one understood the pain he was going through, so I asked my wife if she could talk to him, seeing if she had also lost a loved one and that maybe Dave could relate better with someone who went through something similar. Yes, I know now that this was a huge mistake. We'd pay him visits daily. She would spend hours on end at his place, even without me there. They were going on hikes together, watching movies and not inviting me, grabbing lunch, all things couples do. Now, obviously, this was far more interaction than I had intended for them to have, and it did make me uncomfortable, but Dave was doing much better from it. It's important to say that Dave and Sue never liked each other before all this happened. This is because Sue always thought he was a douche before he married his wife. Dave was bouncing from relationship to relationship, and even after he got with his deceased wife, he constantly cheated on her. As a result, Sue had a particular dislike for him and always questioned how I could be friends with someone with such low morals. This disdain for Chris is also what made me oblivious to what was to come. As I mentioned, Sue and Dave became inseparable to the point where she would invite him to things I had planned for us as a couple. Moreover, she started portraying characteristics of what I now know to be classic cheater behavior. Always on her phone, becoming increasingly distant, little to no intimacy, and coming home very late. At this point, it was all too suspicious, and one day she was texting, and I asked who she was talking to. She said it was one of her girlfriends, and when I asked to see what they were saying, she became very irritated and called me possessive. When I talked to Dave about how uncomfortable their friendship was making me, he assured me nothing was up and even accused me of not trusting him and my own wife. I was getting gaslit. This continued until one day Sue went out again. She said she was going to her sister's for the weekend because she needed some space from me because I was driving her crazy with my accusations. I was still very suspicious and called her sister to confirm if she was indeed expecting Sue to visit. She confirmed that she was, but that Sue had not yet arrived. Mind you, she had left around 3 p.m., and her sister's place is about 4 hours away from where we live. It was now 10 p.m. Something in the back of my head told me to go to my friend's house, so I did. Sure enough, my wife's car is parked a couple of feet away from my friend's house. At this point, it was clear as day as to what was going on, and I hate to admit it, but I cried hard. After a few minutes, I decided to go in and see if this is really what was happening. I went in through the back door, which I knew would be open. I quietly made my way, and I could hear my wife moaning. I was shaking when I made it to the door of his bedroom. I could see through the crack my wife bent over on his nightstand. I'll never get that image out of my head. I'm literally crying as I'm writing this down. I pushed the door wide open, and they both froze, staring at me. It took every ounce of my being not to beat the living hell out of Dave. I just walked away and got into my car. I could hear them scrambling, and my wife started screaming at me to stop and that she can explain. I didn't want to look at her. I don't know what I would have done, so I just drove away. I cried the entire drive home, and they were both spamming me with calls. I went to one of my college friends and have been here the past week or so. I can't eat, I can't sleep, and I can't think of anything else. I informed my work of what was going on, and they were kind enough to give me time off. I've been getting phone calls from both Dave and Sue, as well as both our families. I let my family know I was all right and would be back soon, but I haven't responded to anyone else ever since. This hurts so bad. I want to die. I want to be gone from this world, but I'm too much of a coward to do it myself. I'm trying to be strong, but my resolve is wavering. How can someone you love so selflessly do this? I don't know what to do. How do I deal with this? Please help me. Update 1. First off, I wanted to thank you all for your support and words of advice. You all made this time in my life somewhat bearable. Some of you shared your own stories and made me realize that this is something I can come back from. I had many thoughts about self-deletion, but I think I'm past that now. Thank you so much for caring. Many of you were asking me for an update, so here it is. Pause to read. I don't know what to make of that. There are many more of those kinds of emails, but I wanted to share that one because it left me confused. I definitely don't know the person I married. What do you guys make of it? As many of you guys suggested, as well as family and friends, I contacted a lawyer and met up with her yesterday. I gave her all the details, and she seems to be very motivated to help me come out of this as financially whole as possible given the circumstances. I still love my wife dearly, but I don't know if this is something I can get over. I received lots of messages from Dave, but I don't want to read them. I often switch from sorrow to rage and don't know how to feel right now. Should I try to see if reconciliation is possible? Or should I just end this marriage now and save myself more heartbreak? My family knows everything. Apparently, Sue confessed what she had done to everyone. I've been away from everyone for more than 2 weeks now, and I still don't know what to do. The pain still feels fresh. Every time I close my eyes, I can see nothing else but Sue and Dave together, and the pain doesn't seem to be lessening. I know most of you are saying to just divorce, and I would say the same thing too, but things aren't that black and white when you are the one in the situation. Given all this new info, I'd appreciate any advice, particularly from people who've been here, betrayed spouses and wayward spouses. How did you manage to move past this? Is it even possible? Right now, I'm almost certainly going to move on with the divorce, but I just need reassurance I'm making the right decision. I've read all your comments and felt I needed to add this. I was told by her, as well as family and friends, that she has been living with her sister the past few weeks. In one of her emails, she explained that she has only spoken to Dave once since I found out and went full and see with him. Her mother called me and apologized for her daughter's behavior via text. I didn't pick up her calls. She said Sue is in individual counseling at the moment. In another one of her emails, she said she was never going to leave me for David. She has feelings for him, but she doesn't love him. Dave is supposedly leaving soon, but is apparently holding it off until he speaks to me face to face. There's a lot of other stuff I haven't addressed, and I'm probably leaving out some details, but some of my family and friends are saying I should just talk to her and move on from there. That's where I'm at now. Update 2. So I took some time off of Reddit and other social media to reflect on my marriage and the steps I was going to take moving forward. I was getting lots of advice from the kind people on here, as well as family and friends. However, I wasn't sure what I really wanted. A lot has happened since then, so this might be a novel. Bear with me. When I looked back on the marriage, most of it was filled with little else but happy memories, which is why I was trying so hard to find a reason to stay. However, when I started thinking about her cheating, how she and Dave gaslit me and made me question my sanity, the only thing I felt was rage. The deeper I looked, the angrier I got. I will never forget how angry Sue would get when I questioned her on where she'd been when she came home late, where the disgusted look Dave gave me when I asked him man-to-man if there was anything going on between him and my wife. The cheating was bad enough, and even worse was that it was with my best friend, but the gaslighting, I will never get over it. Fair enough, I was played like the fool I was, but it takes a special kind of person to lie so effortlessly and so well. I don't know how they were able to flip the switch like that. I remember one night when she came home late, about 2 days before I found out, She was telling me how much she loved me and how horny she was when she was driving home thinking about me. Now I'm almost certain she had come home from Dave's because she wasn't wearing any panties. She had sex with both of us back to back. I kissed her. This whole situation made me feel like a wimp. How could I have let them walk all over me like that? I feel so emasculated. The more I reflected, the more I got the urge to head over to Dave's. But I couldn't. There is no justice for me, not with our justice system. They get to torment me, assault me mentally, but if I retaliate, I'm the one who gets put in jail for who knows how long. I spoke with my lawyer about this, and she urged me not to do anything stupid. Not only would I go to jail, but I would jeopardize my chances in the divorce proceedings. She suggested I see a therapist, but I don't want to. I don't see the need. I was still getting spammed with emails from Sue, and they were just making me angrier. She was still spewing the same nonsense as before and how miserable her life would be without me. She even had the nerve to send me Bible verses on forgiveness. If I mattered that much, why do it? I started going to work again because I wanted to be busy. Being distracted has really helped me cope better, and I don't drink as much as I was at the beginning. One day while at work, I received a letter from Sue. I wanted to just throw it away, but decided to read it. In it, she talked about her individual counseling and how it helped her discover some underlying issues she was having with herself. The biggest of all being her low self-esteem. She explained that the discrepancy in our attractiveness made her very self-aware, and that deep down she wanted to feel desired by someone other than me. According to her, her sister has always been much prettier than her, and this contributed to her low self-esteem. She said that even though she knew I was attracted to her and that I made her feel beautiful, she sought that validation from someone else. She apologized again and said it wasn't an excuse, but that she was simply looking for a way to make sure it never happens again but I decide to give her another chance. She then proceeded to ask if we could try marriage counseling to work things out. I still didn't respond to anything she or her family sent me at this point, so I just ignored it anyway. I started the divorce proceedings, and the first order of business was splitting our finances. Unfortunately, I couldn't untangle myself from her without her consent. We each have separate accounts, as well as a joint savings account, and unfortunately, I can't take what I'm entitled to from it without her, even though I make significantly more than she does and have contributed the most to the money in that account. I'll probably have to split it with her 50-50, so I just proceeded with filing the divorce papers. She was served a few weeks ago, and then the show started. The very day she was served, she showed up at my apartment with a divorce petition in her hands. I don't know how she found out where I was. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever, and all the pain from that night came back. All the emotions I felt returned with renewed vigor. I almost teared up again, but I didn't. She looked like she had been crying, and she rushed towards me and tried to give me a hug. I gently pushed her away, and this somehow made her hysterical. She started shouting, asking why I was giving up on us so easily and if we could just talk it out. At this point, I figured I just wanted to get away from her. Looking at her gave me a wave of different emotions, so I wanted to get away before I did or said anything I would regret. I tried going back to my car, and she threw herself on the top of the hood. I asked her what she wanted, and she said she just wanted to talk things through, that we couldn't end our marriage in such a manner without at least clearing the air. I relented because she was clearly not taking no for an answer and was making a scene. We got into my apartment, and I just sat down and listened to what she had to say. Again, she said she would do anything to save our marriage, that she doesn't love Dave, that she's sorry. She said she did some research on how we can move forward and suggested a trial separation. In this separation, she said I could date whoever I wanted, but that I should hold off on the divorce and at the very least give her the chance to mend our friendship and then our relationship as husband and wife. She suggested a lot of other crazy stuff like a one-sided open marriage in my favor. She tried showing me stories of other couples who have survived infidelity and even suggested that we should just move to a different state or even a different country, just the two of us. That part kind of hurt me because we had spoken about moving and starting our family not too long before all this happened. When she was done, we just sat there in silence again, just staring at each other, and then I asked her why. Why him? Why cheat on me with him and then come back only after I caught her? She started sobbing really hard when I asked these questions. She said she felt really guilty, even during the acts, but that she didn't know how to stop. That she was so deep in the affair that she didn't think of the consequences and what she was going to lose. She said that the counseling made her realize that she probably would have cheated on me at some point, if not with Dave, then with someone else. This was supposedly because of the same underlying issues that she was unaware of. I asked her, sure, if she loved Dave, and she promised me she didn't love him, that they haven't spoken since I left and that she doesn't even know where he is now, that she loved only me and would do anything to make up for what she has done to us. I asked her if she had ever cheated on me before all of this, and she swore on her dead father that this was the first and last time. I asked her who else knew about her and Dave. She hesitated and said only her sister, but that she only knew about it a few days before I found out and that she implored her to end it and come clean to me. You guys who suggested that the sister knew were spot on. I also asked her why she was begging, why she didn't just leave to be with Dave. I asked her if she was only doing this because she felt like it was the right thing to do and not because she actually wanted to be with me. She answered saying that she was doing it because she loves me and because she knows she made some horrible choices. We talked for a long time, a lot of crying on her end, but not for me. I had cried enough when I first found out and didn't have any more tears to shed over this. Then I asked her if there was anything else she wanted to tell me, if there was anything else she was keeping secret. She started sobbing again and asked me not to get angry. I got really nervous when she said that. She started crying for a bit before I urged her to just say it because she was making me uneasy. Then it came out. She said she found out she was pregnant not long after I had left and that she got an abortion because she wasn't sure who the father was. She said she thought if it turned out to be Dave's, there would be no room for reconciliation, and she felt she had to do it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was in shock. And she started begging even more not to let this be the end of our relationship. I just went numb. I asked her to leave and she begged me to stay, that we still needed to talk. All this begging was simply infuriating, coupled with the news I just heard. I asked her how far along she was when she found out she was pregnant, and she said a few weeks. Then it hit me. Wait, you said in an email that you only started having sex with Dave about a week before I found out. Was that a lie? She nodded. She explained that she only said that because she didn't want to hurt me with the details and was trying to minimize it. She confessed that it was physical for less than a month. She tried to console me, but I pushed her away. I asked her to leave and never come back. She tried saying something, but I just started yelling at her to leave. She asked if we could talk again once I've processed everything, and I refused. I told her I had found a job in another state and would be moving as soon as the divorce was underway. In our state, there is a 2-month cool-off period after you file. I had already planned on doing this and was just finalizing everything before I resigned from my current job. I had already given my boss a notice at that point. When she heard this, it was more of the same crying and pleading like before. I told her to leave or I would call the police. She reluctantly left, and I just lay on the floor wondering where I went wrong. How did my marriage get to this point in such a short period of time? I just couldn't understand it. I was somewhat sure of the divorce before, but after she and I spoke, I was now more sure of my decision than ever before. I ignored all efforts on Susan's part for contact again. However, a few days ago, this was on Thursday, I received a phone call from my mom that Sue was in the hospital. Apparently, she was hospitalized for a drug overdose. This all felt like a nightmare. I still don't know how to process all of this. Why is all of this happening? I visited Sue in the hospital and she seemed to be okay, but she was checked into a psych ward. That's where things are at now. I still have no idea why she would do this, and the time I visited her, she was asleep. It hurts because I still love her, and right now I'm just happy she's okay. I haven't been thinking of the divorce given what's going on right now. How do I even proceed? There's probably a lot of important details I'm leaving out, but adding them will just make this unbearably long. I just need suggestions on what I should do next. Update 3. I was hoping my last update would be my last post relating to this matter, but here I am again. It's been about 8 months since my life turned into a show, and unfortunately for me, things just keep getting worse. I'm not going to go into detail, but I hope I can give enough to get some constructive feedback from you on here. You've been far more helpful than you know. The last time I posted, Sue was in a pretty bad mental state. Unfortunately, she got better after some therapy. I felt really bad for her, but I knew I couldn't stay. I know a lot of people have made it through this kind of stuff, but I know myself. Had I stayed, I'd only be doing myself and her more harm than good. I'll never get over it and will probably harbor some resentment even a couple of years from now. We agreed to divorce, but she wanted us to remain in contact, even if it was just minimal. The divorce process was pretty smooth, and we got divorced about a month ago. I moved to the West Coast to start anew, and things were finally starting to look good for me, but then I got a phone call about Sue again from her sister. Long story short, Sue suffered from a stroke. She is almost completely immobile on the left side of her body and can barely speak. I can't even put into words how devastating that was to hear, let alone how crushed I felt when I went to visit her. She looked nothing like the person I knew, and she'd always cry when she saw me. One of the worst parts about all this is I can't help but feel like it's my fault this happened to her. People tell me it isn't, but I feel like it is. Even though her closest family says it's not my fault, I can sense some hostility from them whenever I speak to them. Her aunt cussed me out in front of everyone when she saw me, and they were all silent. They just asked me to leave it alone and get on with my life. As much as I wish I could just move on, it still hurts knowing how all this turned out. I haven't spoken to Sue since she got the stroke, and her family won't let me see her because apparently I cause her stress. I don't even know the full details because I don't have the right to know now. I just can't seem to catch a break. This story is inconclusive. OP has not updated us nor posted on his account again. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My husband, Jake, he's 44, and me, I'm 41, have been hanging out together for almost 10 years now, and we've been officially married for 8 of those years. At the start, everything was super awesome. Like every time we were together, it was just fun and happiness all over the place. We would laugh, dream about cool stuff, and do all those tiny things that made us super into each other. We were like the ultimate team. Think of it like playing a co-op video game where we were both on the same side, winning at life together. Our smiles were like those super contagious ones where you can't help but smile too, and everything just seemed better when we were hanging out. Every year when our anniversary came around, it felt like we were just soaking in all this love. We'd have these comfy Sunday hangouts and surprise dates that made everything feel just perfect. Life was pretty straightforward, and we absolutely loved every bit of it. But then, kind of out of the blue, things started to shift. Our date nights weren't as chill as before, and we weren't laughing as easily. It was like the fun had taken a back seat, you know? So here's what happened next. I began to notice that Jake was spending a lot more time on his phone, way more than he used to, especially when it was supposed to be our time together. Our dates, which used to be super relaxed and fun, started to feel a bit off. There was this weird tension hanging around us, and the happy vibe we always had started to fade away. It felt like our special connection was slipping away bit by bit. The closeness we shared was vanishing, and instead, there was this big gap between us that seemed to get wider every day. I couldn't help but start thinking that maybe Jake was seeing someone else. He started getting these late-night calls and weird texts way more often than normal, and it was hard not to notice. I brought up how he seemed really distant lately, like he was there but not really with me. When I asked him about it, Jake just said I was making a big deal out of nothing and that he was just swamped with work stuff. It was tough, you know. Here we were, supposed to be super close, and suddenly there's all this space between us. Jake kept saying it was all in my head, but everything felt different, and I couldn't shake off the feeling something was up. So my gut was telling me that all this worry wasn't just me freaking out over nothing. It felt like our marriage was going down a path I never expected. Then one day, something happened that turned my worries into something real. Jake was out walking our dog, and I was doing some laundry, right? That's when I saw it. A lipstick mark on the back of his shirt. I felt this cold shiver go right through me. It wasn't just me being suspicious anymore. This was like actual proof that he was close to someone else. Feeling that hit me hard. My stomach was all tied up in knots, and I just felt super uneasy. Jake had a way of making me doubt myself before, like my worries were just in my head, so I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I decided to play detective in silence. I waited until I could get a look at his laptop, my heart racing the whole time. I was so relieved when I didn't find anything bad there. For a moment, I felt lighter, like maybe I was wrong after all. Even after finding nothing on Jake's laptop, I couldn't stop thinking about that lipstick mark on his shirt. It just didn't add up. Jake always wore a suit over his shirt for work, so how did that lipstick get on the back of his shirt? Couldn't have been an accident. That tiny clue felt like a big red flag waving in front of me. I was stuck riding this roller coaster of feelings. Relieved I didn't find any evidence on his laptop, but still bugged by that feeling that something wasn't right. So I came up with a plan. I thought maybe if we had a really nice dinner together, just the two of us, it could help us get back on track. Plus, I was hoping to bring up the whole lipstick thing and see what he would say. With a mix of hope and nerves, I decided to surprise Jake by picking him up from his office on Friday evening. I was picturing this perfect evening where we could really connect and talk, hoping it would clear the air and bring back some of the happiness we used to share. My excitement for our planned dinner date quickly vanished when I got a message from Jake saying he had to stay late at work because of a huge pile of work he had to get through. I felt bummed but decided to just go with it and not tell him I was actually downstairs ready to surprise him. Just when I was about to leave, feeling a bit let down, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. Jake was leaving his office. That didn't make any sense because he just texted me about having to work late. Feeling a mix of confusion and curiosity, I watched him get into his car and drive off. Something inside me just clicked, and I decided to follow him, needing to see what was going on for myself. I had no idea that what I was about to find out would hit me really hard. I tailed his car until he pulled into a bar's parking lot. My mind was racing with questions. What was he doing here if he was supposed to be swamped with work? Why did he lie to me about working late? It just didn't add up, and I felt this sinking feeling in my stomach as I tried to make sense of it all. Watching Jake at the bar felt like watching a nightmare unfold in real life. He seemed totally at ease, moving from one woman to another, chatting them up and swapping numbers like it was the most natural thing in the world. Seeing him act this way, so openly flirting with other women while we're married, was like a punch to the gut. It was hard to wrap my head around how relaxed and unbothered he seemed by it all. Feeling a mix of shock, disbelief, and desperation, I made a spur-of-the-moment decision to talk to one of the women Jake had just given his number to. She had stepped outside, probably waiting for her ride, and I approached her with my heart pounding. I didn't beat around the bush. I just asked her about Jake. Her reaction when I told her he was my husband was like a scene from a movie. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise, and then her expression changed to one of shock as she realized the situation. What she told me next confirmed my darkest suspicions. She looked genuinely taken aback and quickly told me that Jake had introduced himself as a divorced guy going through a tough time. Hearing those words from her, confirming what I feared, was both shocking and heartbreaking. It was a lot to take in, and I was left reeling from the revelation. He had made up a sad sob story about himself and his imaginary ex who had apparently cheated on him. I was beyond disgusted to hear the truth about my husband. I couldn't believe that he was going around lying to strangers just so he could hook up with them. The realization hit me like a gut punch, and I felt an overwhelming urge to puke. The sheer disgust mingled with the betrayal left me grappling with a mix of emotions, unsure of how to react to the depth of his deceit. I remember leaving the bar in the daze, making sure that Jake didn't catch me that night. It was the most difficult night of my life. I don't think I have ever cried so much since my dad passed away. The pain was excruciating, and to realize that the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with was cheating on me. The worst part was that he didn't betray me because he was in love with someone else, but he had betrayed me for meaningless flings with random women, which made the betrayal even more painful. When Jake returned that night, I pretended to be asleep. He reeked of whiskey and sweat and didn't even bother hiding it. His brazen attitude hinted at his growing arrogance, where he had started to think that he could just get away with something like this. I stayed awake the entire night thinking of my next steps. At 6 a.m., before Jake would wake up, I stealthily took his phone out of our bedroom so I could go through it. Going through his messages, calls, emails, and pictures, I diligently documented evidence by taking photos on my own phone. This morning, after Jake left for work, I drove to my mom's place because I knew she was the only one who could comfort me. At my mom's place, I poured out my heart, sharing every painful detail of the discovery. She listened patiently and was beyond outraged that Jake could do such a despicable thing. My mom, being the rock that she is, discouraged me from confronting him about it because she knew Jake could spin the story and would never admit his mistakes out loud. She urged me to start researching and consulting with a lawyer to understand my legal options. She told me what was at stake here if I continued this marriage with a cheating husband. I was a bit disoriented, but I understood her sentiments. I asked her to keep the news of my divorce private and not tell the rest of the family about it yet, and my mom agreed. For the next few weeks, I delved into researching and contacting potential legal representatives, seeking someone who could guide me through the upcoming challenges. Working from home allowed me the flexibility to invest time in finding the right lawyer. I knew it was time to be strategic and ensure the best outcome for myself. This is how I met Loretta, an adept Latina attorney renowned for her representation of women in extramarital affair cases during divorce. I sat down with her, and together we strategized a plan to navigate my situation. We discussed potential approaches and legal steps to ensure a smooth process as I prepared myself to move forward with my decision to end my marriage. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, and I was getting ready to face Jake. He had no clue about what I was going to do and kept up with his late-night work routine. Our anniversary was just around the corner, and I didn't want to spoil the memory of our marriage with divorce papers, so I decided to wait until after our anniversary celebration to break the news to him. Little did I know, things were about to get even worse. On that fateful anniversary, I prepared an amazing dinner for Jake, thinking that this was going to mark our last dinner together ever as a couple. So I waited for Jake to return home. I got a notification on my phone from my youngest sister. I opened it to find an image of Rachel and Jake, both wearing smug smiles, seemingly sharing an intimate moment. Utterly confused, I wondered if it was an AI-generated image or if my sister's phone got hacked. Worried, I called her right away to check if everything was all right. Rachel answered the call calmly. I asked her if she was okay and if her phone was hacked. She replied curtly that the picture was very much real. My heart sank, and I struggled to comprehend the betrayal unfolding. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I bombarded Rachel with questions, hoping it was some twisted joke. She nonchalantly explained how she and Jake met at a bar a few weeks ago and felt a connection. I was baffled, trying to understand how my sister could betray me like this. Rachel went on, rubbing salt in the wound, claiming that Jake had told her that he was the happiest when he was around her. My sister's words cut through me like a knife. I never expected Rachel, my own blood, to betray me this way. She continued describing how they planned to reveal their relationship on the day of our anniversary because Jake didn't want to pretend any further. The pain of her admission only deepened the wounds already inflicted by Jake's deceit. I struggled to comprehend how two people so close to me could orchestrate such a cruel twist of fate. The conversation ended with Rachel arrogantly saying she hoped I would understand their love and leave Jake peacefully as she hung up. A mix of emotions overwhelmed me. Shock, betrayal, and the crushing weight of the crumbling pillars of trust in my life. I felt blindsided by what had just happened, and the reality of my shattered world sank in. Rachel, my younger sister, had always been close to me, or so I thought. A bond was built on shared childhood memories, countless laughs, and the unspoken trust between siblings. It never crossed my mind that this seemingly unbreakable connection would crumble because of my husband. Tears streamed down my face, but this time it wasn't because of what Jake was doing to me. It was the heartbreak of realizing what my younger sister had just done. Amid my pain, I decided to send one final message to Jake. I wanted him to know how deeply he had hurt me, so I poured my emotions into words, expressing the betrayal and disappointment I felt. It was a difficult message to write, but I knew I needed to stand up for myself. I sent a picture of the divorce papers we were about to sign along with the message that I would be leaving these papers for him at home, so he should sign them at the earliest. I also sent the same picture to my younger sister, wishing her good luck once she uncovered the truth about Jake and letting her know that I was about to divorce him the next month anyway. I anticipated the smugness in her expression might crumble once the reality of her choices sank in. With the weight of my decisions pressing on me, I gathered the strength to get ready to move out as I called my mother to ask if I could stay at her place. She could sense something was amiss from the tone of my voice. She urged me to come over immediately, her concern echoing through the phone. When I arrived at her place with my packed belongings, the floodgates of emotions burst open. I broke down in tears, finding solace in the comforting embrace of my mother, who kept asking if Jake had done something to me again. I didn't know how to tell her what Rachel had done to me, so I showed her the picture that my sister sent me earlier. My mother's eyes widened in shock as she stared at the picture, and a heart-wrenching scream escaped her lips. The realization of what my sister had done hit her like a tidal wave. She collapsed onto the couch, her face twisted in disbelief and anguish. Amidst her breakdown, she uttered words of disbelief, questioning how Rachel could betray me in such a way. In the midst of her shock, she held me close, assuring me that we would get through this together and that she would support me no matter what. Her words were comforting balm, offering a glimmer of strength in the face of the painful truth. In the days following this incident, I find myself emotionally drained, unable to summon the strength to even get out of bed. The weight of the betrayal coupled with the exhaustion of countless tears has left me feeling like a mere shell of myself. Sleep has become both my refuge and my escape from the painful reality. My mother, fueled by a mix of anger and concern, took it upon herself to confront Rachel. She has called her repeatedly, hoping for some semblance of remorse or understanding. However, each conversation has only fueled Rachel's defiance. Instead of acknowledging the pain she has caused, Rachel insists that her newfound relationship with Jake is rooted in love and keeps vehemently denying that she did anything wrong. She has also gone as far as to say that Jake was never happy with me anyway. In the moments of silence, my mind keeps replaying the image of Jake and Rachel's smug smiles. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, and the wounds have festered with each passing day. I kept going back and forth on whether I should tell Rachel the reason behind why I was going to divorce Jake. She seems to be oblivious about the depth of his betrayal, and I know Jake won't ever tell her anything. However, Rachel's unabashed smugness and apparent lack of empathy is making me wonder if I will be the a-hole for not giving her a heads up at least about what lies ahead for her if she goes along with her decision. Update 1. I have woken up to hundreds of messages and comments from people expressing their support and reaching out to show they care. I am truly grateful to everyone because I didn't expect such a positive response when sharing my story. Following the advice of many, I have decided to have a sit-down with my sister in the coming week. As our older sister, I feel it's my responsibility to share my perspective and reveal the truth about Jake. If after hearing everything she chooses to stay with him, then that's on her, and I won't let it bother me any further. I will be meeting with my lawyer today to update her about this ongoing situation as we will be required to disclose everything during our divorce proceedings. Jake sent me a text informing me that he signed the papers and would be filing them. Curiously, he questioned how I managed to prepare the papers so swiftly, oblivious to the fact that my awareness of his infidelity had led me to prepare our separation long before he even acknowledged the situation. I didn't bother replying back to him. Hopefully, we can initiate the process of separation in the next few weeks. My family members are now aware of the situation, and they all stand firmly by my side. They are disgusted by Jake's infidelity with multiple women and expressed concern for my sister. Forgiving her for being involved with someone else's husband is something they find incredibly difficult given the gravity of the situation. We'll update next when I meet my sister in the following week. Update 2. As I had mentioned earlier, I decided it was time to have a heart-to-heart with my sister, so I reached out to her. I made it clear that I wasn't looking for a fight, just an honest conversation. Surprisingly, she agreed to meet up, and we found a quiet place to talk. When we finally met up, I could feel the tension as we sat down for what was going to be a very difficult conversation. I urged Rachel to be honest and open, pursuing her that I wanted to know what was going on inside her head. At first, she maintained a smug demeanor, almost reveling in the attention she believed she had stolen from me. Rachel began to describe her feelings for Jake, saying how she had always desired him and thought I wasn't good enough for him. She continued to say how she had always wanted us to break up while we were dating, but we eventually married each other, and she had lost all hope. She described how they met in the bar by chance and started to talk about his marriage, where Jake painted our connection as lacking, almost dismissive of the years I have invested in our relationship. She realized how unhappy he was with me, so she comforted him, which eventually turned into something more between them. As she continued to describe their relationship, Rachel's smugness transformed into a subtle arrogance, seemingly fueled by the belief that she had triumphed in some twisted competition. She told me how he kept pursuing her for the next few weeks and even talked about leaving me for her. I struggled to keep my composure, silently absorbing the words that were tearing at the fabric of our bond. Rachel then started to demean me by saying I shouldn't be jealous of her for being a better partner. She questioned my worth as a partner and suggested that I was somehow responsible for his actions. Her audacity reached new heights as she insisted that I should be the one offering an apology. According to her, I was the catalyst for the anger and disapproval flowing from our family members. In her warped version of reality, the blame shifted onto me, as if my pain and the betrayal I was experiencing were mere inconveniences in the grand narrative she had constructed in her own head. I chose not to engage in this futile argument as I knew her accusations were unfounded. Instead, I maintained my composure in my attempt to keep the conversation civil. I was about to reveal my side of the story when Rachel dropped a bombshell. She revealed that she had recently discovered she was pregnant with Jake's child. This revelation hit me like a ton of bricks, and I felt a deep sadness thinking about how this would be connecting her to Jake forever. She explained that she and Jake had discussed their options, and despite the strange circumstances, they had decided to move forward with the pregnancy. Rachel seemed to be relishing the idea of her future with Jake, her confidence evident as she detailed her visions of family life with him. To join her, I seemed oblivious to the horror on my face as she shared this. A mix of emotions flooded over me. Sadness for my sister, frustration at the predicament she found herself in, and a profound sense of hopelessness. I took a deep breath, with measured words, and started to reveal my side of the story. I explained that my decision to divorce Jake had been in the works for weeks. I recounted finding a lipstick smudge on his shirt a few months ago and gradually discovering his interactions with women in bars. I continued revealing how he had been unfaithful for a long time, leading me to stop being intimate with him after learning the truth. Hearing this, Rachel immediately started denying that this couldn't be true, insisting Jake would have told her otherwise. I shook my head at her callousness, making her realize she wasn't the only woman Jake could have cheated on me with. Her initial disbelief gradually gave way to the undeniable truth as I presented pictures, emails, and messages that laid bare Jake's deceit. I explained how I had been preparing to divorce him and was planning to serve him divorce papers after our anniversary. Rachel, confronted with the evidence, started to backtrack. She claimed that even if Jake cheated, he loved her, and they were meant to be together. I retorted that that connection was built on a bunch of lies. As she tried to continue to defend Jake's actions, I highlighted how I had felt the same way as she did when I first found out about what he had been doing and the emotional toll it had taken on me. In the midst of our conversation, her initial arrogance waned as she began to grasp the gravity of the situation. When I questioned her how she could betray me like this, she appeared remorseful but insisted that her feelings for Jake overpowered any sense of familial loyalty. She kept insisting that what they had was special. By this point, there was nothing left for me to say, so I quietly accepted the fact that my sister was making choices that would forever alter our relationship. With a heavy heart, I bid her adieu, wishing her the best of luck in the challenging path she had chosen with Jake. The weight of betrayal lingered, but I had made my peace with the fact that our bond was irreparably damaged by the choices she had made. Since talking with my sister, I have found a sense of closure that has lightened my heart. I'm lucky to have my mother by my side during these challenging times, providing the support I need as I navigate through the emotions and uncertainties ahead. Update 3. It's been 5 months since my last update, and life has taken unexpected turns. The divorce proceedings with Jake have been almost finalized. Luckily, we don't have kids or much stuff to split, so we're close to wrapping it up. This will mark the end of a chapter in my life that I can't wait to close and move on from. While the legal process has been challenging because I have to face Jake every time, I find solace in the support of friends and family who have rallied around me during these tough times. The news of my sister's pregnancy hit my mother particularly hard. When she found out, her initial shock turned into deep disappointment. She has since refused to talk to Rachel. The hurt was evident in her eyes as she still can't fathom the choices my sister has made. On the other hand, Rachel has not reached out to me since, losing meaning despite the shock of discovering Jake's betrayal. She has chosen to continue her journey with him. The pregnancy is progressing, and Rachel and Jake will be becoming parents very soon. While part of me wishes them well for the sake of the innocent life that they are planning to bring into the world, the scars of betrayal still linger. Amid these challenges, I am dedicated to working on myself and leaving all this toxicity behind me. I want to work on my personal growth, find joy and simple pleasures, and nurture the resilience within me. I have rediscovered some of my old passions and rekindled friendships with old friends that had otherwise taken a back seat during my marriage with Jake. I know with the passage of time, my wounds will eventually heal, and I can't wait to see what lies ahead in my life. Thank you to everyone who has been a part of this journey, offering support, empathy, and encouragement. While the road ahead remains uncertain, I embrace the possibilities and count the blessings that come with each new day. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My girlfriend tried to baby trap me, but didn't know I had a vasectomy. I'm not the baby daddy. This happened to me over the course of a few years. This is a throwaway, and the story may turn out longer than I thought. The backstory. I have some buddies at work that like to go out with their significant others on double dates sometimes. I was invited on several occasions, but let them know I'm not currently dating. So what do? They get me a date, of course. It's a coworker of a buddy, so we'll call her P. P was a very shy, quiet girl from a family that wasn't as strict or super religious. She seemed out of place at first, but looking back, I think she fit in with the crowd more than she let on. I won't give the significant others or buddies labels because they are not relevant for most of the story, but they are important for how she and I met and one or two other occasions. So, as 3 couples went out, we hit it off and became fast friends, drinking the night away. I end up kissing her and paying for a taxi to take her home. Fast forward 6 months later, me and P are living together. She moved in with me and we are great together. We don't fight, and if we do, it's something silly that blows over seconds after it begins. One night, after we had done the deed, I looked down and noticed my condom broke. Panic mode engaged. I start freaking out and tell her what happened. She immediately calms me down and says she's on birth control. I get relieved, but then relief turns to surprise. She never mentioned this to me before. Did she? She passes it off as something she mentioned to me, but I was busy with Fallout New Vegas at the time. Yeah, this was around when that game came out, so I probably didn't notice her say anything. Again, looking back, this should have been a red flag. I chalked it up to extra precautions on her part and felt really good about how well we worked together. She was being responsible for both our sake. Birth control along with condoms can only make things extra safe, right? Nope. She gets sick a week later, complaining that she is always in the bathroom and can't hold food down. Yeah, you know where this is going. The PE stands for pregnant now. I am usually a pretty calm guy, but man, oh man, was I flipping my lid. Not at her, mind you. I make pretty good money, enough for her to only work part-time and go to school. I don't go to school. I worked, and still do, but in a much higher position in a trade career, which I won't name for anonymity's sake. Babies change things, though. That meant she would have to stop school, stay home for several months, and then get a full-time job. I wasn't worried about me, but her. I can manage, but she wanted to finish school and be stable enough so that if we ever decided to have kids, it wouldn't be in this kind of situation. Well, she ends up getting an abortion, begs me not to tell her parents, who again are not super religious, but this is a big negative to them. It took months of her talking to them and me courting her to let us live together. She and I were both 21 at this time, so of course I wasn't going to say anything. I was almost shocked at her decision. That's right, hers. I hoped she would get one for her sake and mine, in all honesty, but I would have stayed and raised the child with her through hard times because I loved her. For about 4 months, we barely talked. I thought things were over, but then one night, everything just magically went back to normal. I thought, yes, we are okay again. This was also a red flag, but in my excitement, I don't think I realized it. Now, having a big scare like that and knowing she was on birth control led me to the decision some of you may or may not cringe at: the vasectomy. I had one. Now, I went in for the consult with my primary care doctor and was referred to where I had it done. A week of ice and paid vacation. Now, I know what you were thinking, and I saved some juice for later just in case. And although I should have, I didn't tell P. Now, I know that you're thinking, WTF? But honestly, she was on break at the time, visiting family. I wanted to wait and let her know when she got home and not discuss it when her parents are around. Wasn't sure how they would react if they overheard. I'm sure you can see how much her family's opinion matters, and it will come up later too. I was back at work on light duty, and business picked up fast. I had no time to even text or call her, letting her know I needed to talk to her about something important. By the time she got home, we both got so busy that I didn't even mention it. This may seem odd since it's a major game changer for a relationship, but I was also a young man whose life was, and still is, mostly full of constant go, work, work, work. It just vanishes to the cold storage sometimes. A heartbreak fast forward. 2.5 years later, I was promoted a few times, was high off life, loved my so, and we were thinking about getting married when she finished school. By this point, our relationship had progressed enough that we no longer used birth control pills or condoms. Now, she said she got an IUD to prevent pregnancy. I thought that was odd at first, thinking about how I was snipped. Oh well, maybe she just wanted to be extra sure. Well, not so much about that. Midway through August 2014, and she gets sick again. This time, we have no idea what she could have. I rush her to the ER and become that guy who took his so to the hospital to find out she is pregnant. Now, the first thing most of you guys probably think I did was scream, "You're a cheater!" Nope. I acted just as surprised as she did. Told her it's fine, we can get through this, and I'm with her 100%. The truth now, state laws differ, and your results may vary, but here, unless the father signs a birth certificate himself in person, it doesn't count. I made sure because the first thing I did after getting some time alone from her was see my company's attorney for a consult. He recommended me a good person to seek legal counsel in paternal matters. A week and a half or so later, I meet him and make sure if I have undeniable proof that I'm not the father, I would have no responsibility for the baby or P, according to our state laws. So I had my assurances, and as far as she knew, it was probably mine, right? After all, we were not using any birth control at all, none. Turns out, she had scheduled the appointment, had it put in, but it was removed because of complications that caused pain and swelling. This I was not informed of. Now, normally, I leave personal belongings alone. I trusted her and didn't want to be the overbearing. So that looks at your phone by accident type. We both had our own phones, PCs, and tablets, so she didn't suspect a thing when I searched through, literally, no joke, guys, hundreds of emails of her back and forth, setting updates, times, and prices. That's right, she was effing for cash, or so I thought. Turns out, she was actually effing for free and selling meds that she stole from patients. The abortion she got was not the first. Oh, did I mention she was in school to become an RN? She would sneak meds any way she could. She would take them from old people, young people, cancer patients. She was a sneaky one too. She hid all of this from me and her teachers, as well as her parents. Her biggest supply was using people she had previously sold to. She would have them get hurt or help them get hurt and then get them prescribed pain pills. The revenge. I hope you stuck it out, and I hope this belongs here. For the entire time of her pregnancy, I said nothing to her, her parents, her friends, her teachers. She was close to graduating and close to being a mom. Everything was so happy for her. Everything was going great. Well, I got an apartment and paid rent for it secretly. The place we lived was in her parents' name. Reason being, at a moment's notice, they wanted to be able to kick me out for wronging their daughter. This turned out to be an amazing blessing. I started selling my stuff to put into a fund for the baby, but was really moving it to my new place. She thought I was crazy when I sold my gaming rig, laptop, and Xbox. I said, "It's all for us, baby." Now, this next part was risky, but I had no choice. I needed some help. I talked to the buddy who got me with her to begin with. They will be B and SO. B had left the company I worked for, so this would not negatively affect him in any way. I needed more info on P's part-time job so that I could get back at her. So, B was her boss, and she was exactly the same to them on the outside as she was to everyone else. To this day, I kind of admire her ninja ability, but it's also why I have no regrets or guilt. I told them everything, showed them everything. B and so were shocked, sad, sorry for me, sorry for her, then effing furious with her. How dare she manipulate them like this? So, stated things go missing from the workplace, cash drawer short, but P is always covered some kind of way. She had been framing people and was just very careful and calculated in her plans. So, B, in all honesty, never looked real hard at her either. Her facade had everyone fooled. Well, lucky for me, so said, in P's maternity leave, security cameras were replaced and better quality. We made our plan. Then, in comes the week that she is due. She is wheeled into the hospital and stays for 3 nights before she birthed him. I have no problems with the child, as you will soon find out, but at the time, he was a symbol of misplaced trust and a broken heart. They have to take the baby away after a few minutes. He is jaundiced, and although he seems fine, they want to make double sure. She reluctantly lets him go. What should we name our son? I tell you, readers, I must have looked like the cat from Alice. I sure felt like I was. Our? You mean, you're what color? She had left drains, and she stammers to speak before I put my hand up and tell her. I got a snip 6 months after we started dating. Her face almost seems to cave in. That confirms for me the baby is only your baby, not ours, baby, but yours and yours alone. Tears, nothing but tears. I told her that she was never to speak to me again and walked out. I told the medical staff that under no circumstances was my name to be on that certificate. I was a concerned former boyfriend that she cheated on, and she was a junkie. Lab reports on the cord blood, unfortunately, later showed this to be true, but the baby was fine. And that I was only here to make sure her baby was all right. I was not to be contacted, and if she says I'm her boyfriend, don't believe her. If I needed to prove that to them, I would. I left, packed my things, and left to my new apartment. Pro-revenge. I know what you're thinking. That was not really that harsh at all. I didn't think so either. I waited until she was back at home. I left my keys and $400 in an envelope at her place so that she had money when she was out and also to bait her. I knew that she would either buy some more pills, B, try and sell her busted, C, maybe just maybe get her together and fix herself, C, cry to mommy, or D, work and school. I'll take a B and D for $400. Alex. That's right, she did all 3. Now, I know at this point I'm okay on the work front. I'm also okay on the parent situation. The moment she was released, her parents picked her up because I wasn't there. She called them, complained, told them everything. I was going to be thrown out. But what's this? I'm not there. She was probably upset she didn't get the joy of kicking me to the curb. Instead, there was the envelope for her with $400 in it and the keys. I don't know what went through her head, but she was already back into her normal routine before long. She must have thought I skipped town completely. Calling work leads to a not here. They were informed. Asking so leads to B hasn't heard from him. She thought she got off the hook with 1 baby and nothing else. A while later, she gets fired. Security footage shows her manipulating drawers and framing other employees. She tells her parents it wasn't her. They believe her. Next, her school gets a big package from an anonymous source, letting them know she was recently fired for stealing and substance abuse. Now, I am not sure how she got through school and the hospital without these substances in her system popping a red flag. I know they tested the cord blood from the baby, and I specifically stated she was a junkie. I never dug into it. Probably should have. Her school has a zero-tolerance policy against substance abuse. The package also contained the emails, as well as messages to and from buyers, sellers, and anyone else she did shady business with. Did I mention the hospital she worked at also got a package, and the police, her parents, disowned her, fired, expelled, and CPS was on her case to wrap it up. She lost everything, including the baby. He's fine now, though. His real dad was found. She basically went back and looked for anyone that could have possibly been the father at that point in time. Kind of impressive considering the guy was 29, call him D, had been divorced and was lonely. I understand he had a great house and income, so he was given custody after a paternity test. Best part, the other couple we were with on the first date, she banged that guy. That's right, he actually still works at my company too. I remember when he went through the divorce. I didn't talk to him much, so I had no idea he banged her. It only took one time. She never told anyone she met for sex. She was in a relationship. He had no idea we were dating. He didn't talk with me enough, and I was in a different part of the workplace at that point. So, in the end, she has no home, no friends, no job, no career, a rap sheet, and now her kid is with his dad, and she gets 0 visiting rights. I'm single, still hang out with So and D, have my job, my apartment, and best of all, I'm not the baby daddy. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My wife informed me she slept with the best man at her sister's wedding. The time frame is important here. We have been married for 3 years. We were together as a couple for 2 years before that, so we've been together for about 5 years. 2 weekends ago, her sister got married, and of course, my wife was in the wedding party. So, as you would expect, she spent the 2 weeks prior to the wedding helping her sister get everything ready. No big deal at all. She kept me informed, and I knew this was going to happen. She took that Wednesday to Friday off of work to help her and, in fact, stayed with her 3 days. I certainly know her sister, but I barely know the guy who is now my brother-in-law. In fact, I only met him a few times, but he seems nice enough. I show up Saturday morning a few hours before the ceremony in hopes of stealing just a few minutes to see her, not wanting to intrude on the day since I know she is busy. But I hadn't seen her since Tuesday. She sees me outside of her parents' house and sends her brother out to tell me that she will come out and see me at the car, which I thought was odd, but whatever. She finally comes out and sits in the seat next to me and gives me a kiss. But instead of acting happy to see me or whatever, she tells me that she has to talk to me and she doesn't want it to ruin her sister's day. She informs me that at the reception, if I still want to go, I might hear some things about the best man and her, and she didn't want it to be awkward or weird. I just kind of sat there stunned. She said that about 4 years ago she had a fling with him and that it didn't mean anything, but she was aware that by nature I'm somewhat jealous, and she wanted me to know in advance so that if I heard something I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I just kind of sat there. This was not how I thought my morning would go. But I told her I appreciated knowing it and that it certainly wasn't a big deal. Now, she went back in the house, and I went to eat lunch and decided to meet her at the church. As I'm eating and reading my phone, it dawns on me. She said she had a fling with him 4 years ago, and we've been together 5. My first reaction was to blow it off and think that she just told me the wrong time. But the more I thought about it, the more I started to remember about a year and a half of us being together. She had a phase where she was really sketchy about her behavior, wasn't available when she normally was, and went on 2 weekend camping trips that were with friends from work. Of course, I'm a little knotted up over this, but I know I have a long day ahead of me. I go to the wedding and sit there watching everything. After the wedding, they have a line that you walk by and congratulate the bride and groom, and the wedding party is standing in line as well. My wife is standing with some other guy. I don't know him at all, but the best man was there, and I just went down the line and acted like no big deal. I get to the reception, and it takes forever for them to come because of photos. She finally gets there and sits with me. I decided not to say anything as I didn't want to distract from the day, but instead of just letting it go, she then tells me that each of the groomsmen and bridesmaids are going to dance and that she is going to be dancing with him. I asked why when she was not his partner for the party, and she said that the maid of honor and her partner were actually married and wanted to dance with each other. At this point, I'm a little more than perturbed, but I try and not let it show. Thankfully, I was smart enough to not drink because I freely admit I'm an angry doctor, so I know when not to even partake. She talks to everyone around her, and then the dance comes, and he comes over and extends his arm, and she gets up. I try not to watch, and, in fact, I make it a point not to. She comes back with him in tow, and they are joking like the best of friends. She decides that it would be a good idea to introduce us, and while I didn't say to F off like I wanted to, my greeting to him was probably not cordial, but it did not deter him from sitting and talking with her for a few minutes. The more they sat and talked and reminisced about old times and places, the madder I got. Eventually, I got up and went to the bathroom, and when I came back, he was gone. She decided to tell me that she thought I was rude, which was not what I was all about hearing at the moment. I told her that this wasn't the time or place to talk about it, but rest assured, we would talk later. She sat there and then said that she was going to change clothes, and as soon as she got back, she was telling her sister that we were leaving because I had ruined her day, but she didn't want me to ruin her sister's day as well. I told her that I was perfectly capable of not being a bother to her or her sister the rest of the day, and that I did not want to be the cause of any drama, so I would prefer to just stay. She went and changed clothes and then came back all in a huff. Now, understand, I have not said a word to her. I even shook the other guy's hand. I guess I just looked miserable, so that is what she was basing this off of. She was adamant about not staying, and so I said that if she really wanted to go, we could go. But if she would rather stay, I would be happy to stay, or if she would like, since I came in my own car, I would leave so she could stay. She at first said that we should stay, but then said if I couldn't act any better, I should leave. I asked how I was acting, and she said it was obvious I was trying to be like a silverback gorilla wanting to fight. I didn't know whether to laugh in her face or be offended. I went back in and sat down while she mingled with the other guests. I talked with her brother for a while, but then ultimately ended up back at our table talking with her grandma. We leave at the same time, and I arrived home just before she did. I was sitting in the living room waiting on her when she came in and did not beat around the bush. I simply asked her to retell me the story about this other guy, and she said it word for word like before. After sitting and looking at her for a time, I just said, "Are you sure about the time frame?" And she said she was. I then reminded her that we had been together for 5 years, so this fling was well over a year into our being together. What happened next I can't really put into words. Instead of being flustered or denying or anything, she simply said, "I know." So, I asked her to explain, and she tells me that they worked together and that it was just a physical thing, and she felt like we weren't in a great place at the time, and that she never had any feelings for him and never had any real intentions of leaving me. She just was having some fun for a few weekends. She said that it was probably a mistake on her part to tell me now, but she didn't want me to get blindsided. I did not take this the way she thought I would. I guess we had a very large argument and ended when she told me I was being a child about all of this, that we were married and this happened way before that, and our life together now has nothing to do with him or that time. Well, 2 things. 1, I adamantly disagree about this having no bearing on us. She effing cheated on me and doesn't even have the goddamn decency to feel guilty about it. 2, I hate being told I am childish when I get upset over something. Pisses me off to no end because that is her way of acting superior to me. I told her I needed time to think, and she told me there was nothing to think about. We loved each other, and this didn't change anything. That was 2 weeks ago, and I still am not over it. She has been trying the past few days to get me to talk to her, but I admit that for whatever reason, I'm not viewing her the same as I did before. This part of me is like, this is stupid. It happened a few years ago, and we are married now, and there hasn't been any problems at all. But then part of me is like, I just found out she cheated on me, and it hurts like a mother effer. And what makes it worse is that instead of trying to understand how I feel, she is trying to guilt me into just not even thinking about it. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry for the length. I probably should have cut out some of the wedding stuff, but it all came out at once. Update. My wife informed me she slept with the best man at her sister's wedding. My wife informed me she slept with the best man at her sister's wedding. First, I want to clarify something from my first post that I really did not spell out very well. It doesn't have any real bearing on anything, but for some reason, it bugs me that I made this part sort of murky. The maid of honor, not my wife, was married to the groomsman who my wife walked down the aisle with. There were some people who felt my wife was trying to arrange the dance, but I do know for a fact that this part was legit. However, it doesn't mean she didn't try and offer to let them dance or any other form of manipulation, but I just wanted to try and clear that part up a little. I'm here because I have gotten honest to God over 40 requests for an update since last week. Thank you for your guys' concern on this, and I wish I had some really ballsy statement to make about how I stood tall and kicked her to the curb, but sadly, that is just not what happened. To be blunt, I'm in limbo. There have been developments, but all they have done is make it harder for me to decide. Last week, I was mostly angry. Then, as the weekend progressed, I became mostly sad. I want to be able to hate her and flip that switch that tells me I'm being walked on and I'm a sucker, but it's just very hard for me to do that because I still love her, and this is ripping me apart. Here is what has happened of any consequence. She finally came to the realization that I was not going to just get over this. This then brought her to the realization that I might want out of the marriage. This then brought on a near nervous breakdown from her. Someone, hell, from the first post, stated that she would try and manipulate me like that, and believe me, I was taking those words to heart when I thought she was having crocodile tears. But it soon became apparent to me that she wasn't acting or faking. She was having a legitimate panic attack. This led to an ER visit, and that led to an overnight stay in the hospital, and then to new medications and a scheduled follow-up with her doctor for later next week. This brought her family into it, and that in turn led to long conversations all the way around when we got home with her family in tow. I asked what she wanted to do since there was a house full of people, and she said she wanted to be with her mom for a while. That was fine with me as I had no desire to hang around all day with her dad or sister, so I said I was going to go finish up something at work and would be home later. 2 hours after I get there, I get a text from her begging me to please come home and that she really needs me to talk with her. So, I finish up what I was doing and head home. I am greeted on my own front porch by her dad who asks if he can talk to me for a minute. My anger level was already somewhat high, but I was ready to go to war if she had dumped a crap sack of lies on me with her dad. I mean, it's not like he and I are best friends and crap, but I've never had a bad moment with him, so I really wasn't going to be happy about being the bastard who broke his baby's heart. We sat on our deck chairs, and he effing floored me with his opening salvo. I was expecting to hear anything but what he said. He said that she told them what had happened and that he wanted to apologize to me because he said that he felt like he did a really crappy job as a parent and that this mindset that she had was really a creation of her mother's, and that while he loved both of them, he said they were wrong, and he had told his wife years ago that telling the girls that whatever happens before marriage doesn't count was a horrible idea and value system to install in them. He then said that he wasn't there to stand up for what his daughter did, but he just wanted me to be aware that what she was saying and how she was acting was simply because she honestly believed that being married was an entirely different life and that they, mom and dad, had romanticized marriage to the point that she wasn't understanding real life. Basically, he was kind of throwing his wife under the bus. But again, this is not what I was expecting at all. We shook hands, and he said that no matter what I decided, he still thought very highly of me, which honestly made me feel really good for that moment. I then went inside, and my wife is curled up in a ball on her mom's lap, and you can tell she has been crying the entire time I've been gone. Mom gets up and comes and hugs me and tells me she is sorry, and that she loves me, and she is praying that we can work this out. My wife is laid out on the couch at this point. Her mom and dad leave, and she sits there looking at me and crying. Okay, this is where I'm going to piss off everybody and just tell you that I couldn't take it. I went to her, and we hugged for a long time with her telling me over and over how sorry she was. Hey, I know it was the weak thing to do, but again, I have to say in my defense that just before this incident occurred, I loved her with all of my heart and would have done anything to not see her in pain. Whatever she had done, I still didn't want to see her like that. Look, it's very possible that she was putting on an Oscar-worthy acting job, but I don't honestly think so. She really seemed broken at that point in time. After a while, when she calmed down, I asked her what she wanted me to come home and talk about, and she said she wanted to get everything out in the open so I didn't feel like I was being lied to or manipulated. So, she wanted me to ask her questions, and I wish I had written down a list, but I came up with a few off the top of my head. She was brutally honest with me, and some of the questions I asked I probably shouldn't have because now the mental image is stuck in there, but honestly, was there any way I just now have confirmation? First, I asked for dates or at the very least approximate dates. I didn't tell her about the engagement concern I had because I didn't want her to change stories, and she remembered exactly when they occurred. Fortunately, this happened a little earlier in our relationship than she told me initially, and so we were not engaged when this happened. I can't tell you what a relief it was because I became physically ill when I thought about that when someone said it in my last post. Second, I asked how many times she went overboard with this because instead of just telling me how many different dates, she decided to tell me how many times there was penetration. She wasn't doing it to be mean. She honestly thought that is what I wanted to know. This part of the conversation did not help me any at all and, in fact, almost broke me down. In truth, it wasn't that often, and in fact, there were really only 3 different days it happened on, but there were several times during those 3 days. Then came the hard part. Why did she do it? Okay, again, I'm not the most manly of men, and I am ashamed to admit this, but I couldn't get this out without starting to cry. I asked, why wasn't I good enough? Why did she not just leave me? It was her turn to hold me because at this point, everything came rushing at me. Her telling me having to watch them laugh with each other, her now telling me how many times they did it and where they did it. She talked during this, but to this moment, I have no idea what she said. I was too upset, and honestly, nothing she was going to say was going to make a bit of difference anyway. But after I composed myself, I simply told her that the betrayal was horrible, but honestly, her response to me when I found out was just as bad, if not worse. She agreed with me, and she apologized for calling me immature. She said that she honestly believed that it wouldn't matter to me now because we were married. When she said this, my blood started to boil again. I started to say something about it, but she jumped in and said that after talking with her parents, she now sees that this was very wrong of her and that cheating is cheating, but she still feels like that our happiness that we have shared since being married should count for something. I then replied that I kind of felt like that happiness was built on a lie. This led to another breakdown on her part and almost another ER visit, but between Xanax and having her breathe into a paper sack, we got her calmed down. I let her sleep the rest of the night feeling like emotionally we were both tired, but come Sunday we were talking again. By this time, I wasn't as sympathetic as I had been when we got home from the ER. I told her that I thought her introducing him to me was crappy, me having to watch her dance with him was extra crappy, and the fact that she only told me because she was going to get caught was an elite level of crappy. Which then I demanded to know why did she think I would find out and how many of the effing people at the wedding knew besides me. Well, obviously the guy knew, but then his best friend in the world also knew. Did I mention that he is now my brother-in-law? Which then led to her sister finding out, and she was afraid her sister was going to be the one to tell me. I asked how often she sees this guy, and she said that the wedding is the first time she has seen him in 3 years. Then I lost my crap and asked her if she had sex with him during any of the lead up to the wedding. She got all pissy about it, acting like she wouldn't have sex with anyone because she was married, and I just lost my crap and had to leave for a while because once again I felt like she was living on Married Planet or some such crap, and the world there is a different place than for the rest of us. I finally got cooled off enough to come home and try and be civil about things. She finally asked me what she could do to help me get past all of this, which may not sound like much, but it was the first time she offered to help me really, so it was at least a nice gesture. I told her I wasn't sure what she could do or if there was anything either of us could do, and that I may never get over this. She said that she wanted to help because she didn't want to see me in pain and that over the years, she hopes I'll be able to judge her based on who she is now. She would do anything I wanted to work this out. She also wanted to be sure that I knew that she has been 100% faithful since we've been married and would never cheat on her vows. I sarcastically thanked her, which I admit wasn't the most mature thing to do. I then asked for a moratorium from further talks until at least Wednesday. I have 2 projects I have to get done, and honestly, I'm just exhausted and know I have no effing clue what I want to do. I shift between periods of red-hot anger where I want to kick her out and then periods of deep emotional turmoil where I want to just forget this and move forward with her. Yes, I know this is not what anyone wanted to hear, and no, I'm not proud to type it, but it is what it is at the moment. Update 2. My wife informed me she slept with the best man at her sister's wedding. I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the responses I have received over this. I have gotten over 400 private messages, and I just cannot respond to all of them or any of them anymore as it would take me a week to do that. I want to thank all of you who have written to me and those of you who this struck a chord with. All I can say is that I'm sorry you had to go through this as well. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I do want to say one thing though, is the vast majority of the people contacting me via PM were all afraid to bring up their point of view in the open for fear of being harassed. I have honestly taken both points of view into consideration, and there's been some great advice and some not so great, but I think people's hearts are in the right place. I just wish that if people disagreed with each other, they wouldn't feel the need to demonize a person because of a point of view. Okay, for the hundreds of you that have been clamoring for an update, here it is. As you know, I asked to just drop it until last night so I could focus on a job-related item I had to get done. She kept her word about it, but I could tell she was very emotional and honestly nervous. She is taking some strong benzodiazepines for her anxiety, but even as strong as it is, I can still see how anxious she had been. I wasn't intentionally trying to punish her. In fact, quite the opposite. I really was trying to give her a break as much as me, but she told me last night that not holding her or showing any real affection towards her was almost torture to her. Well, last night finally arrived, and we had what my dad always called a come-to-Jesus meeting. I got home from work, and I brought dinner so there would be no distractions of cleanup or anything. We started talking around 6 o'clock and finally ended around 2 o'clock. In that time frame, we laid out a lot of issues that have been present and what, or if, we are both willing to do to move forward. Long story short, starting today, I'm living with my brother for the next few, not sure. She is understandably upset by all of this, and I am making an effort to communicate openly with her, so she does not feel abandoned or neglected. If you're wondering how we got from talking to me living with my brother, here it is in a nutshell. I know this is not going to make several of you very happy, but here is where I'm going with it. I want to save my marriage, but I can't do it living what I feel was somewhat a lie. I know she never intended to lie once we were married, but when I sat down and thought about this one question, would I have stayed with her if I had known at the time she did this each and every time? I answered no. So, to me, she took away my ability to choose whether or not I wanted to continue, and we built the next few years based on the foundation of something that wasn't quite true. However, the truth is, we still built something. Sometimes foundations can be repaired, and sometimes you have to tear them down to build new. This is what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to shake things up enough for both of us so that we can start over. Like I said in the very first post, our marriage until this point had been what I would consider to be perfect, or as perfect as any one thing can be, but there were some very troubling things that occurred due to this, and here is a brief synopsis of our talk. I laid out the fact that while I absolutely was upset about the cheating, and yes, I still consider it cheating, which she has now come to realize that this is the way it is and is going to be considered, I was equally upset by her lack of consideration for my feelings on this. I told her that I resented being told I was immature and a child for something that, objectively speaking, I had every right to be upset about. Her response was to apologize and tell me she was in the wrong and that while she admits fault and sees what I'm saying, that at the time she had convinced herself that because we were married, that I was wrong to be upset about something that happened beforehand, but she now sees where this is wrong. I then told her that I felt very disrespected by her associating with this guy right in front of me and that I felt humiliated having to shake his hand. Her response was to once again apologize, and she said that in her mind at the time, she felt like she was trying to show me that there was nothing there. She said she felt like if she avoided him or acted shady around him, that I would be more upset. I told her she was wrong. She said that out of all of the things, this is the one that has hit her the most in the face because even her sister has told her how poor this was for her to do to me, and she was deeply hurt by this because it had hurt me, which she never wanted to do. I then talked about her lack of remorse over being with someone else while we were together. Her only response was to say that she was very sorry, that at the time she just used very poor judgment, and if she could go back and change the past, she would. Then came the talk that got the most discussion, how I felt like she really wasn't sorry for anything, but that she was just sorry that I didn't just shrug my shoulders and say that everything was going to be okay, that there were going to be repercussions for what I consider to be an act of betrayal and then an act of not caring about me. I'll give her full credit here. She was brutally honest about this, and at least she was, so we didn't have to spend hours trying to work our way around it. She admitted that when we got home after the event, she started to realize that I wasn't going to let this go, and then as time went on, she knew that this was an issue. Her first instinct was to be mad at me for being mad at her, but then realized even from her own point of view how stupid that was. But again, she had it beat into her head that she was my wife and that I should easily forgive and forget something that happened way before we were married. She also admitted that when it became real, she frankly outright panicked thinking about losing her marriage. Nobody on either side of her family is divorced, so she could be the first, and she admitted to that being a big factor in her panic attack. But as the week has progressed, and she has spoken more to her family, she is seeing that what she has put in her mind about marriage isn't the end-all be-all she thought it was. She also did really feel bad about bringing the guy around to me. However, you will notice, which I did too, that she never said she felt guilty about being with him. Now, I want everyone to know this as well. What I have given you from above is a brief synopsis of events. She sounds like a robot in this version. And believe me, she was not. There were lots of tears. Real honest tears. I've seen her cry as much as me before, so I know the difference. There were a few curse words, and there were even moments of pleading and begging. As I said, this went on for 8-ish hours, so by the time we were done, she was physically exhausted. I have set out the following steps if we are to reconcile, and it is totally up to her if she wants to stay together. She is very, very adamant about staying together, by the way. I don't care how illogical it seems. She is to never have contact with him again. This is an absolute for me and a deal breaker, and I was absolutely clear on this. We have to have couples therapy while I'm living with my brother. We are still legally married, and this is not an invitation or excuse for either of us to see anyone else again. Deal breaker in a second. If either of us uses this as an excuse, believe me, I will not, and I don't believe she will either. We start over to a point. I have to view her differently now, even if I didn't want to. I can't just forget that she chose to cheat, so that's where we are now. I know that is not what some of you wanted, but ultimately, I have to go with what I believe will make me happiest in the long run. My head says be aware, and I am going to guard my heart for a long time, but my heart is still in love with her. We are going out on a date Friday night, which she is really looking forward to. I have no idea how long I will be with my brother. Hell, I may not make it past Friday, but if nothing else, I feel like I have some control here, which I felt prior to the talk. I had almost none in the end. I held her for a long time and we slept together. I do not want a broken woman right now. That is kind of what she is. I want her to be my partner for life, but I do want her to know that to be a partner, she has to equally care about my feelings as I do hers. P.S. I had to do some real hard thinking about my new brother-in-law. Again, I've only met him a few times and he seems like a nice enough guy, but at the end of it all, he certainly was aware of the issue. But just to keep peace in the family, I'm going to not make a stink about him because that will certainly make every holiday tough going forward. As long as he never mentions the incident or the guy ever again to or around me, I can live with it. Final update. My wife informed me she slept with the best man at her sister's wedding. Thank you all who keep sending me messages of encouragement and wondering what has happened. For those of you who have asked me to give you an update, here is a brief one. I've been staying with my brother for a little over a month. I cannot say enough nice words about him. He has bent over backwards to help me, and I've come to appreciate him in a whole new way. Growing up, we were close, but never really close, if you know what I mean. This has shown me that our bond is much stronger than I ever imagined it was. The big news is that I have delivered her with divorce papers. Now, before those of you who wanted me to dump her jump for joy, let me explain something. I went to a divorce lawyer and explained everything, including the fact that I did not want to go through with a divorce but wanted everything in place just in case. He drew up a decree and made 3 copies. One he kept on file, one for her, and one for me. I decided to take the paperwork to her myself because I knew she would be upset, and I wanted to explain to her what was happening. I gave her the paperwork in a manila envelope and explained what it was before she opened it. I also made very clear to her that I was not going to do anything with it unless we both failed to meet the conditions we both agreed upon. I explained that I was committed to us, but I really needed to see that we were headed in the right direction, and that this was only there as a standby in case she didn't think I was serious. Well, this did not go over as well as I had hoped, and in retrospect, this was a mistake on my part. She had been doing everything in her power prior to that to live up to the agreement. We had been out on several dates prior to this that were great for both of us. In other words, my timing sucked. My intention was good, but it did make it look like I was not acknowledging the steps she was taking to make this work. This led to another giant anxiety attack that we could not get under control with her meds. So off to the ER we went again. This time, they gave her a shot and sent her home, and we both agreed that we would keep her family out of it this time. I stayed with her for 2 days just to make sure she was okay. This, of course, came up in our counseling session, and well, let's just say that I came across looking like a manipulative butthole, which again, in retrospect, I was. I ended up taking my copy and her copy and tearing it up in front of her. She doesn't know there is a 3rd copy, but I plan on having him discard that as well. So, now I pretty much feel like a monster because the look on her face when she got the divorce papers was something I never want to see again. She was so happy to see me that day, and then I gave her that, and an instant combination of sadness and terror. Other than that bump in the road, things have actually been going very well. Well enough, in fact, that I'm moving back home this weekend. My brother has been great, but I'm cramping his style no matter what he says. It's been fun playing Xbox every night though. I won't deny it, but mostly, I'm going home because she has done everything I have asked of her, and I have put her through hell. I think she's paid a steep enough price, and I know she knows how serious this was. Also, in case I didn't mention this before, I do love her. She made a very stupid, selfish mistake, but it was years ago, and she had been almost the perfect wife up until that discovery. So, I'm sorry to disappoint many of you, and I'm sure I will once again get many PMs telling me that I am a cuckold and an embarrassment to all men. But I don't live your lives, and you don't live mine, so this should be it. There hopefully will be nothing to update going forward. We are not cured or healed by any sense of the imagination, but we are on our way, and it's just going to take time, patience, and understanding. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.